Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today is November 13th, and we've got some Silver Slugger winners to go over, as well as some of my free agent predictions. Let's do it. Hello, everybody. My name is Steven. This is the middle of the order. How are we doing today? Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a quiet offseason so far. Not a lot happening just yet, but the moves will come once the first domino falls over. Today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the Silver Sluggers that have been officially announced. We'll go through that. A couple manager news to go over, and then as well as some of my predictions. I want to have a realistic prediction, as well as a crazy, unrealistic prediction that could happen. And we'll be doing all of that in today's episode here. It's also the start of the awards week, so I'll mention it at the end as well. But chances are the next episode will be on Friday, and we'll be going over the Rookie of the Year winners, the manager, Cy Young, and MVP on that day. But for now, let's dive on in and start talking about our Silver Sluggers. And this time, let's kick things off in the NL instead of the AL like we did for the Gold Gloves. We'll start with the catcher for the NL, and it's coming from the Milwaukee Brewers, William Contreras. What a year he had for the Brew Crew, coming over from Atlanta and having a great year. He was part of that three-team trade that got Sean Murphy to go to the Braves. So good for the Brewers there to get a powerful, hard-hitting catcher, beating out his brother as well, Wilson Contreras. Moving on over to first base, how about a couple Braves we'll find out on this list. And it starts with Matt Olson. What a year he had, over 50 home runs, setting Braves franchise records and new record for home runs, RBIs. He was absolutely killing the baseball. Drove in a bunch of runs for the Braves. Moving on over to second base from the Marlins, Luis Arias. Remember when we were talking about this guy hitting 400? Well, he definitely cooled off since, but he was up there for a long time. We were getting close to the All-Star break, and he was still around a 390, over 400 still. He slaps the baseball hard. He puts it all over the field. He's a tough out to get. He even had a couple of home runs towards the end of the year, finishing close to around 10, I believe. But yeah, good year for Arias. A smart move from the Marlins to trade him for Pablo Lopez, who worked out for the Twins as well. One of those trades that is just really nice to see. Third baseman, how about Austin Riley from your Atlanta Braves? Another powerhouse. Riley's been one of the top 3 third basemen offensively in the last 5 years. He's a power guy. He's a slugger. It's what he does. A young third baseman as well. Moving over to shortstop. Remember when Orlando Arcia was the All-Star? No, move aside. It's Francisco Lindor with the Mets. One of the few bright sides that the Mets had is that Lindor had a really nice season. Obviously when he first came to the Mets, he was struggling a little bit, but he's kind of getting back into that Mr. Smiley rhythm that he had over in Cleveland. So good for Lindor there. For our outfielders, we start with the guy from the Braves. The 40-70 season was created in his name, Ronald Acuna Jr., the first player in Major League history to have 40 home runs and 70 stolen bases in a season. So congrats, Ronnie, for that. My hope and my pick for the NL MVP. But if it's not him, it's going to be the second guy here, Mookie Betts from your Dodgers. 39 home runs, one away from his first ever 40 home run season. Mookie was part of the reason Dodgers are so well. He's one of the best players in baseball today, and he is a slugger for sure. And then lastly, the guy getting lots of trade rumors right now from your Padres, Juan Soto. What a year for him. One of the few bright spots on that Padres team. Obviously, things did not go according to, the way they drew it up at the beginning of the offseason. But Soto was a big part. The Soto Shuffle remains one of the best parts about him. In my mind, I like his little dancey dance, but he's a good hitter regardless. And whether he stays with the Padres for this last year or gets traded, to a team like the Yankees, let's say, he's going to have another good year next year in 2024. The DH, of course, is Bryce Harper. I mean, to come back, do a little bit of first baseman, but mainly primary DH. Was a part of that big Phillies team, and he is a slugger for sure, one of my favorite players. Everything about Harper just screams ball player, and he's a great hitter and deserves another Silver Slugger for his mantle. The utility goes to Cody Bellinger, of course, having a resurgent season after a couple of rocky years with the Dodgers after being an MVP back in 2019. He found his form again with the Cubs, and he had a great season, and he's looking to have a great deal somewhere this offseason. So good for Bellinger. And the Silver Slugger Team Award, of course, went to the Atlanta Braves, one of the best teams in MLB history in terms of offense. Their slugging percentage was through the roof. And they had overall, I mean, you couldn't find one downside in that lineup, whether it was, Matt Olson, Acuna, Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies was there, Sean Murphy was doing well, Eddie Rosario. The list can go on and on. The Braves team was elite at the bat this season. Flipping it over to the AL now, catcher Adley Rutschman from the Baltimore Orioles. Probably his first of many of these awards. He is a pure hitter and a great defender, the switch hitter as well. He's really a 5-tool player, so good for Adley there. For first baseman, how about Yandy Diaz from your Rays? What a season this guy had, hitting above 300, hitting all over the field. He was a tough out this year. He's really coming in his own as one of the more elite first basemen in the league right now. Second baseman Marcus Semien from your Rangers. Despite his offseason struggles, this guy was a pure hitter in the regular season, played in all of their games and had the most chances, and he drove in a lot of runs and was a big bat for them leading off most games, so good for Semien there. For third baseman, I was expecting it to be Jose Ramirez, but it is actually Rafael Devers from the Boston Red Sox, and I mean, kind of an underrated year in my mind then for Devers, because I really didn't hear much about him throughout the season, obviously, but he's a guy that gets up there with plenty of home runs, drives in a lot of the Red Sox runs, and people don't forget the Red Sox were kind of in it, entering September, with a chance to make the postseason. They did slip out of it, though, because of how they didn't have really the pitching and all this other stuff. But Devers is an elite third baseman in the league right now and is deserving of that. Shortstop Corey Seager, enough said. He's going to get second in the MVP voting. He had a phenomenal year and also missed a lot of games with injuries. So the fact that he was still able to put up elite numbers shows you how good his season was. For the outfielders, we got Kyle Tucker from the Astros, Julio Rodriguez from the Mariners, and Luis Robert Jr. from the White Sox. Robert Jr., remember when he first came into the league and was like the next Mike Trout? He hasn't played up to that yet, but he's having a good season this year, and he's been having a couple of good seasons the last 2 seasons now. Julio, of course, you can't say much about him. He is a star for the Mariners. The guy you should know if you're a Seattle Mariners fan. And then Kyle Tucker, underrated in my mind. I think this guy is one of the best hitters in the league. I love his swing. I love the way when he hits a ball, just the way it goes off the end of the bat is really nice. So congrats to those three. DH, Shohei Ohtani. Not going to mention that much. Obviously, it was going to be Ohtani. The utility guy, how about from Baltimore again? Gunnar Henderson, another rookie for them. He had a great year. He's most likely going to win the Rookie of the Year. Gunner's going to be a scary at-bat going into the future here. And lastly, the team for the AL Silver Slugger, it will be the Texas Rangers. Obviously, the World Series champions had a potent offense throughout the season. And it's the reason why they won so many games and the reason why they were still able to make the playoffs despite kind of crawling into it at the end there. They were struggling before the postseason. And then once they got there, they turned it back on and made it all the way to the end. So congrats to Texas there. those are your Silver Slugger winners. I got a list here. The first time winners here: William Contreras, the catcher from the Brewers; Yandy Diaz from the Rays; Gunnar Henderson; Matt Olson, which surprised me. I did not realize Matt Olson, this was his first Silver Slugger; Luis Robert Jr., Adley Rutschman, of course, and then Kyle Tucker as well. So all of those guys, congrats on their first time ever winning the Silver Slugger award. All right, next up, we've got some additions to the Gold Glove Awards. They waited a little bit to announce the team Gold Gloves as well as our Platinum Gold Glove winners. But here we are, and we'll start with the team Gold Gloves. For the American League, it is the Toronto Blue Jays. And it makes sense, their defense was elite. They had 3 Gold Glove winners in Barrios, Chapman, and Kiermaier. And that's not to mention the defense that wasn't mentioned. Vladdy had some good defense. Dalton Varsho led the league in DRS, which is defensive runs saved. And then Bo, hit or miss, but he makes some great plays out there. And of course, despite his getting up there in age, George Springer can still dive for a lot of good baseballs. So Blue Jays are very deserve this award. They earn it very much so. And for the NL, it is the Milwaukee Brewers. And of course, they had a few Gold Glove winners themselves, but along the diamond in general, Willie Adames was there, Colton Wong, guys like Sal Frelick, Bryce Terang, some young rookies for that team, and of course Christian Yelich in left field makes some nice plays here and there. So congrats to those 2 teams on winning the team Gold Glove. And now for the Platinum Glove winners, they take all of the Gold Glove winners and say, hey, you were the best defensive in your entire league. Here's your glove. For the American League, that would be from the Cleveland Guardians, the second baseman Andres Jimenez, earning his first ever Platinum Glove. And then for the NL, in right field for the Padres, by everyone's surprise, how about Fernando Tatis Jr. winning his first Platinum Glove winner? That is pretty insane for Fernando because obviously this was his first, full season out there in the outfield, transitioning from shortstop after signing Xander Bogaerts. But I mean, he played a really good right field, has a very strong arm, was gunning out runners left and right. He was a great, spot to put him, and I think he's going to be a great right fielder moving forward. And then Andres Jimenez, he makes plays and decisions out there that, a lot of other big leaguers don't have the mindset to make. His bat was much cooler this year than was last season. Definitely a drop there, but his defense still stands above and beyond. So congrats to those 2 on winning their Platinum Gloves for the 2023 season. All right, now let's talk about some of the managerial news that happened since our last episode. In last episode, I mentioned that the Angels were rumored to make Ron Washington their new manager. Well, in this episode, I'm here to tell you that it is officially happening. Ron Washington will be the new manager of the Los Angeles Angels. And I really like the move. I really like Ron Washington. I'm excited to see kind of how he takes the Angels. They're most likely going to be without Ohtani. So they're already set up for a hard fight in 2024. But he is one of those old-timey veteran managers who have been working recently. After, the fail of Tony La Russa with the White Sox, we've seen it a lot with Dusty Baker and the Astros. Even just now, Bruce Bochy and the Rangers. The old-time managers, it is working for a lot of teams. Ron Washington has plenty of baseball experience to pass over to those Angels. And if we have a healthy Trout, who knows what the Angels can do in 2024. But that is the first piece there. And for the second piece, the Astros do the they go out and go through their manager, their coaches. That's what I'm looking for, Jesus. And they have signed from within. The Astros' new manager replacing Dusty Baker is Joe Espada from their coaching staff. He's going to get promoted and be the Astros' new manager entering 2024. I'm not sure how long he's been with the team, but obviously they like what they have from him on the thing. They don't want to go and find a new manager essentially, or go from outside the system. So Joe Espada will be the Astros' new manager entering 2024. And that's all the major news we have as of right now. So a couple teams still looking for their managers to hire. Craig Counsellor has been officially announced as the Cubs. He had a press conference this morning, I believe. So that's set in stone, of course, as we already knew and expected. But that's our managers for right now. All right, now I just want to talk about this really quickly. Bryce Harper is going to be playing first base going forward. The Phillies president of baseball operations, Dave Dombrowski, he said that, Bryce Harper is going to be playing first base. They want him to be at one position, right? He might have some outfield here or there, but the plan is to keep him at first base and have him spend the rest of his career essentially at first base. He added that he sees, he added that he sees Kyle Schwarber as the everyday DH. They don't really want his defense in the field. And he also mentioned that they did reach out to Rhys Hoskins to let him know of the decision. Of course, Rhys Hoskins is a free agent currently, spent 2023 on the injured list as he had a torn ACL. So some team is most likely going to sign Hoskins now, and Harper will be, the new Phillies manager. So that's exciting for him. Hopefully he's, obviously okay with the decision. They must have talked about that behind closed doors. But moving forward, Harper is going to be the Phillies' new first baseman. So we'll be seeing him, I guess, get better at the position over the years here. Okay, now we're going to go through some of my MLB predictions for the free agency this season. Obviously not doing everyone right now. I did pick out about 20 of the players who I think are the best free agents out there. Really some of the most exciting free agents to watch and see. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to have, say the player's name, talk about them a little bit, and then make an actual prediction of where I think they will land, as well as a crazy prediction that, they could happen, but is somewhat still unrealistic. So let's dive on in and start with the obvious choice, Shohei Ohtani. Everyone's dying to know where he will end up. He's got a few front runners like the Yankees, the Dodgers, high-end teams. This guy is a star. He's a unicorn. He's going to get a massive deal. And I think he's going to the New York Mets. Now, obviously, the Mets came out with comments at in the middle of the season saying they see their window for competing more to be in 2025, 2026, which is fine. It's not really fine for that kind of fan base, but it makes sense. They had a really horrific season. They had to trade away Verlander and Scherzer. To regroup and retool makes sense. But if you go out right now and get Ohtani, players will want to play with Ohtani. That means next year, you sign more free agents, guys who want to be a Met. And then you have Shohei Ohtani leading your staff, leading the lineup, surrounded by guys like Lindor, McNeil, if Pete Alonso's still around there. So it kind of just makes sense for him to go and sign with the New York Mets. And, if he wants, and the crazy team here now, the Toronto Blue Jays. Ohtani had a quote, I believe, that said that he wanted to add another fan base, another country to his fan base, that being Canada, of course, Toronto's team. And also his idol was Yusei Kikuchi, who's currently on the Blue Jays. So there are reasons for Shohei to sign north of the border. Of course, a lot of conversations would need to be had, but there is that slight chance that Shohei does end up on the Blue Jays at the start of the 2024 season. Moving on now, I got Cody Bellinger here. Obviously a great year with the Cubs. And I think he's going to go and find a home in Seattle with the Mariners. Now, obviously, Julio manages center field, but Bellinger could play a first base or move over to right or left field. Right field does make sense. They just lost Teoscar Hernandez, and I don't think they're going to go and re-sign him. The Mariners, as quickly as that door has opened for them, it's starting to close with Texas being extremely good. The Astros are still there. And there's some free agent signings that are going to catch up with them real soon. This one, they got hurt a little bit, losing J.P. Crawford right now, Teoscar Hernandez. The pitching is still intact, but the Mariners' window is going to be closed sooner than you think, so they have to go for it. And I think going to go get Cody Bellinger makes sense for them. And for a team that also kind of makes sense, but is a little bit more unrealistic, it is the Yankees. They're looking for a lefty bat. They need an outfielder, specifically in left field. Pair him up with Judge, put him behind Judge. That makes teams have to pitch to Judge. That will mean Judge will have better numbers. The Yankees need someone, protection in that lineup for Judge. Bellinger being the left-handed, being that short porch at Yankee Stadium, it makes a lot of sense for the Yankees to go out and sign Cody Bellinger, although I do think it is unrealistic. Moving along, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, obviously the star from the NPB coming over in a posting. I think he ends up with New York. The Yankees, they love to get these kinds of players. We remember Masahiro Tanaka, how good he was with the Yankees once upon ago. It's been a while since the Yankees have gone out and gotten a start from the NPB. And Yamamoto fits all the needs they need right now. And I definitely think the Yankees will spend a lot of their offseason trying to go and get Yamamoto here. And now, the most realistic thing is that he ends up on a New York team, regardless if it's the Mets or the Yankees. But a team that could use a pitcher like him, how about the Padres? Blake Snell no longer there. They could use a new lefty arm, and Yamamoto is that new lefty arm that could find his way to the west coast of San Diego to become a Padre there. So I like the move there for them as well. Speaking of Blake Snell, he's next on our list, and I've got him going to the Phillies. This guy's most likely going to win the Cy Young. The Phillies just lost Aaron Nola, and I'm not sure if he's going to come back to Philadelphia. So Blake Snell makes a lot of sense, kind of fits that vibe there as well. Being with guys like Harper and Castellanos, he would fit kind of right in. He does give off West Coast player energy, but I do think he would be a great fit with the Phillies. But if he was going to stay in that West Coast, a team that is, trying to be competitive but is finding it hard to do so, it's the Giants. Logan Webb is really the only star on that team. Pairing him up with Blake Snell as kind of a 1-2, that would be a strong 1-2 punch in the league, and that would make the Giants a little bit better. It is more unrealistic, but it's definitely not impossible. And speaking of Aaron Nola, he's next on our list now. Obviously, his time with the Phillies, I think, has come to an end. A team that, had a very strong season now and is now looking to kind of regroup and continue those successes. How about the Chicago Cubs going out and getting Aaron Nola? Obviously, Justin Steele, what a season he had. It would be difficult for him to, right that ship. But Marcus Stroman's leaving, and that's going to leave it a hole in that rotation. Aaron Nola could come in and help out, teach some young guys some of the stuff. He is filthy, had a great postseason, a great regular season in general. Aaron Nola fits right in with the Cubs. And an unrealistic move is, of course, one of those big, powerful teams in the Dodgers. Their pitching staff is kind of needing some help right now after the whole Julio Urias thing. Kershaw, whether he re-signs the Dodgers or not, regardless, he's out until June, July-ish. The Dodgers need to go get some of these starting pitchers, so expect them to make 2 or 3 moves. Aaron Nola is a big one, but I definitely could see the Dodgers going out and getting it. So there's that one as well. Jordan Montgomery coming off a World Series year with the Rangers. How about Boston Red Sox? They need some starting pitchers. That division, the AL East, is tough. And Boston has a good offense, but they need the pitching to compete. Obviously, Chris Sale dealing with injuries. James Paxton, now a free agent, and they let go of Corey Kluber as well. So the Red Sox definitely need an overhaul of that starting pitchers. And I think Jordan Montgomery could fit that bill. But how about the Mets as well? Remember, the Mets are going to be a team very interesting to watch this offseason because they said that they don't intend on competing this year. That might make it harder for them to sign some guys. But signing Montgomery not only will help them this year, but it will also help them, 2025, 2026 when they're really going to be competing. And if they sign Otani, then a guy like Montgomery makes a lot of sense too. A powerful right-hander in Otani versus now a more off-speed slowster in Montgomery, also a lefty. Matt Chapman, finally, besides Bellinger, a position player on this list here. A team needing a third baseman, a star Gold Glove. How about the Cubs, man? The Cubs, ever since they lost Bryant, they haven't really had someone stick at third base. Matt Chapman could 100% be that guy. They obviously traded for Yaimer Candelario during the trade deadline this year, but of course that was just the year rental. He is a free agent as well. So if they wanted to improve from Candelario, Matt Chapman could definitely be that guy there. And to say it one more time, I think the Mets, they could definitely use a third baseman as well. I don't think it's realistic, but they could throw some money at Chapman and lock down that third base corner for them. They've tried out guys like J.D. Davis, Eduardo Escobar in the past, but it makes sense to kind of get a star third baseman there in Chapman. Moving on, how about Josh Hader? This guy's gonna get a bag. It might be one of the largest closing pitcher / relief pitcher contracts in MLB history. And the team that makes the most sense is, of course, the World Series champions, the Texas Rangers. Chapman's a free agent, and like I said throughout some of the episodes during the postseason, Leclerc doesn't do it for me. He's not a closing pitcher. He's a great 8-inning guy, a great setup. But if Leclerc's coming into the 9th inning to save a game, I don't trust it. But Josh Hader, absolutely. Texas has the money. They can go out and they can go and get this guy for sure. But another team that is kind of likely to happen would be the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, of course, Craig Kimbrell, Jose Alvarado were really good. Alvarado, though, not really the closer type. But Kimbrell's not going to be there, most likely, for this season. So Josh Hader going out to close games in Philadelphia would help them out a lot. So both moves make a lot of sense. But of course, Texas is way more realistic. How about Sonny Gray now? And I think this guy ends up on the Dodgers. A guy who is a small market guy alone, but on a team like the Dodgers, he will shine and he will get the love that he is deserved. Sonny Gray, realistically, ever since leaving New York, he's been a really good starting pitcher with Cincinnati, with the Twins. He's a guy who's done it his whole career, really, besides his time with the Yankees. I mean, even if you want to go back to Oakland in his earlier days, Sonny Gray has been a really good starting pitcher, and I think he needs the love that he deserves, and I think the Dodgers would bring out the best of that. And now an unrealistic move for Sonny Gray, although I would love to see it. How about a return to those Reds? They're a team that with all those rookies, they're going to be competing really soon if they can get the starting pitching help. Now, obviously, Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo were injured a lot for the season, so they had to use some rookies and some young guys. And although they were really good at the first, they eventually did, start lacking and stuff. So they definitely need some starting pitching as well if the Reds want a good chance at competing in 2024. And how about Eduardo Rodriguez, the guy with the Tigers? I think he actually ends up on the Reds straight up. I mean, he fits the whole criteria checklist that the Reds have. The Reds fit the checklist that he has. I mean, I think this is a great fit for each other. I think Rodriguez ends up with the Reds. And if not, I still think it's going to be an NL Central team. How about the Pirates? There's a team that you won't hear much about. But, I mean, their young guys are getting up there. It's time to, kind of go if you're Pittsburgh. Brian Reynolds, obviously, that long-term deal now. So he's happy. You need some starting pitching to back up Mitch Keller, who had a great 2023 year. Eduardo Rodriguez could help out in a big way. All right, we've done a lot of pitchers now. Let's get into some hitters. How about Teoscar Hernandez coming off a year with the Mariners? Definitely a down year for him, not the type of production that he had with Toronto. I think this guy ends up in the Marlins, Jorge Soler replacement, really. And, he's got a big bat. I think maybe the nicer weather, West Coast definitely wasn't it for Teoscar. I think he needs to be on the East Coast. I think Miami's a nice fit for him to kind of get in there with some of the young guys. He could do some DHing, but he can also play right field. So I think the Marlins, are a great fit for Teoscar. And maybe the Angels as well is kind of an unrealistic team. I have absolutely no idea what the Angels are planning to do this offseason. But Teoscar's a bat that could help them. Obviously, they had Grichuk for a little bit. And obviously, they need as much offense as they can get to kind of counteract the Ohtani move. So we'll see what Teoscar ends up doing. Yeimer Candelario, he has spent the year finishing up with the Cubs after getting traded. Kind of the second best third baseman on the market, so teams will be interested in him. I think kind of an underrated move that I kind of talked myself into that I really liked is with the Kansas City Royals. The AL Central, kind of a weak division. The Royals could definitely make a couple moves really quickly, like in this offseason, maybe even next offseason. And then their young pitchers are going to come up. They got guys there. Asa Lacy, top prospect for sure, as well as a few others. And I mean, locking him down the third base keeps Bobby Witt at shortstop, kind of solidifies that left side infield. So I kind of like the move there for the Royals. And if that doesn't work, how about an unrealistic, the Blue Jays? The Blue Jays, last time they had a good switch hitter was Justin Smoke back in 2017. And obviously losing Matt Chapman, they could have a hole to fill. They can definitely fill it with their farm system. But if they want a more MLB guy, Candelario would be that guy. So I could see that as well. But Kansas City just kind of makes sense too. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., what a season he had with the Diamondbacks. Career high year for him. A lot of numbers, some of the best in his career. And what a time for it. He's going to get a bag. I like the move of him going to the Reds. Obviously, like I said, they have a lot of rookies there, a lot of young guys. Now you bring in a guy like him, it kind of just makes sense. It's kind of unrealistic, but at the same time, I do very much like it, and I think it is actually going to happen. Now, an unrealistic move, that would be going to New York. Obviously, he was a Blue Jay. Most Blue Jays don't feel comfortable heading to New York. Of course, Kevin Kiermaier might be that exception. But the Yankees need a left fielder. Obviously, they want it to be a left-handed bat. But Lourdes Gurriel Jr. played a really nice left field for Arizona in Chase Field, which isn't a great ballpark or, the easiest ballpark to play defense. Heading over to Yankee Stadium would be much easier for Gurriel, and he would have a lot better defense there. So it makes sense for the Yankees, although I do find it unrealistic for that move to happen. Jorge Soler, I think, ends up with the Blue Jays. A power bat, they just lost kind of, Brandon Belt, Kevin Kiermaier, some of the guys who they, depended on. Whit Merrifield, another guy. Soler could definitely end up playing some, outfield if they need to, if a guy gets hurt or something. But he is especially going to kind of be that DH role, that powerful bat in the Blue Jays lineup. And it does make sense in an unrealistic but kind of realistic move at the same time. How about going back to the Braves? They had just had an amazing year offensively. He was the World Series champion when they won the World Series in 2021, or the World Series MVP, excuse me. Heading back to the Braves, bringing that power back with him, kind of makes sense. He would kind of be the DH, which means, that means Travis d'Arnaud would need more of an opportunity behind the plate because Sean Murphy's there. It would definitely be a move that would clog up some of their positions, but it would also bring a strong bat back to that Braves lineup. And then how about Marcus Stroman? He opts out. He's looking for a big deal. I like the Twins for him. Losing Sonny Gray, they're going to need to replace that. And the Twins, to kind of stand out, needs to get players who are going to be very good, especially in that AL Central division where, if two things go wrong, it is anyone's division, really. The Royals are starting to creep up there. The Tigers are still, kind of creeping up. And the Guardians are always going to be around. So right now, if you're the Twins, you got to make big moves because Buxton might not be healthy for the full season. And, the pitching could use an overdrive. And I think Marcus Stroman fits that bill really nicely. And an unrealistic move, how about the Cardinals? Who knows what they're going to be this season after having a really poor 2023. They have the offense, really. Tommy Edman, Dylan Carlson, who could be traded. And, of course, the corner infielders, Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. But their starting pitching is definitely the place where it needs work. Marcus Stroman could fit that bill going from Cubs to Reds, just like Wilson Contreras did last offseason. So you could see that happening as well. All right, now finishing up here with our last 5 guys here. Let's start with Jack Flaherty, obviously coming from Cardinals to Baltimore in the trade deadline. He was once a pitcher, very good, strong stuff. Same with Giolito, essentially. You remember how the 3 teammates of Giolito, Max Fried, and Jack Flaherty. Lucas Giolito has fallen off a little bit, and so has Jack Flaherty, I guess, towards the end here. And where do you go if you're, deserving of a contract, but could help and benefit your pitching? How about the Rays, man? Tampa Bay, they could go out and sign both Jack Flaherty and Lucas Giolito, to be honest with you, and fix both of them immediately. I think both would flourish there, but we're specifically talking about Jack Flaherty, and it makes a lot of sense. He kind of got acquainted into the AL East division coming into Baltimore, and he could definitely stay with Baltimore, but it makes sense now to go to Tampa and continue there. Another place that does make sense, unrealistic though, is the Twins. Like I said, they did lose Gray. That division is weak. If the Twins have good pitching, they're definitely going to be a team competing for that Central Division. So Flaherty could be a huge pitching arm for them. Mitch Garver, the really only catcher besides Martin Maldonado, but he does hitting as well, and even if you have a catcher already, he could use him. You can use him as a DH, but I kind of went more for which good team or soon-to-be good team could use a more permanent catcher, and the only team that I could really think of was Miami. The Marlins are rocking out Jacob Stallings still. They need a kind of top tierish catcher, and although Mitch Garver is definitely not top tier in terms of defense, he has a strong bat that would help out the Marlins offense a lot. And he could eat innings, and they've got guys there who love to, who he could work with well. Yuri Perez, obviously Sandy Alcantara is missing the year, but some of those pitchers need a more permanent everyday catcher, and Mitch Garver could possibly be that for Miami. Another spot, unrealistic, would be the Cubs. Last year they rocked out Yan Gomes for a lot. The Cubs offense always could use a buff right now, and they need someone to kind of mend that as well. So the Cubs could also be a landing spot for Garver. Rhys Hoskins. Now this one's an interesting one because as mentioned, Bryce Harper's taking over first base. It's unrealistic that he goes back to Philly. He didn't play this year, so you're kind of looking at him as 2022 numbers as well as what could he be. And for me, the Guardians make some sense. Josh Naylor's there, but now you have a lefty first baseman as well as a powerful righty first baseman. If you want both of them, one would DH. I like the move of him going to Cleveland. I think it makes a lot of sense for Hoskins to go there. And then an unrealistic spot, and I mean really unrealistic landing spot, would be the New York Mets. Obviously, they have Pete Alonso there. If they do this Hoskins move, it would just to be kind of a DH. They would move Alonso to DH and have him play first. It doesn't make sense at all, but at the same time, it kind of does because it would be like a one-year deal. Hoskins goes. He has a really strong season with the Mets here in 2024 while they're not competing, and then he can go and sign a big contract next season with another team who could use a first baseman. So I kind of like that move at the same time, although it is extremely, and I mean it, extremely unrealistic that he signs with the Mets. This one I want to do, although I don't think he's a top free agent. How about Tim Anderson? I mean, a guy coming off a career worst year, an awful year. This guy used to be a hitting machine, won a batting title. He hits, man. If he can figure it out, Tim Anderson's going to be a lucky pickup for a team here. And a team who lost their shortstop will be the Mariners. J.P. Crawford not there. And although J.P. Crawford is a career guy there, the fans love him. He's a lefty. It makes sense for Seattle to go out and try to re-sign J.P. Crawford. I think if they go out and get Tim Anderson at the same time, I think it would benefit, the Seattle Mariners offense, having him as the leadoff, right-handed. If he can figure it out and be a good bat, I mean, Tim Anderson's going to be having a great season, hopefully, for a team here. And an unrealistic team would be a team that's kind of bottom of the barrel, like the Oakland Athletics. I just kind of want to throw them in this for one free agent signing. Oakland A's, you go bring in Tim Anderson. That's going to be a fun guy, for Oakland. If he figures it out, then you can trade him at the deadline, get some prospects back, and he could go help a winning team try to get the World Series here. So, it's going to be interesting, Oakland, because they always go out and they try to find someone, or some of those bottom feeder teams, they go out, sign someone who they think will be really good. They play really good for them, and then they trade them at the deadline. Tim Anderson definitely fits the bill here, as he is a player who, maybe he's peaked, maybe he's tapped out and done, and maybe he's given it off his best years, and he won't be able to figure it out. I have faith in Tim Anderson, though. I have faith in a lot of guys who struggled last year. And lastly here, number 20 here is kind of a mixed bag here. I had two players, one that I think is very likely and one that I think, could happen, but a little bit more unrealistic. For me, it's Joey Votto. And I think he signs with the Blue Jays. It only makes sense. A Canadian guy coming to Toronto, last year the Blue Jays went out and they signed a legacy player for the Giants in Brandon Belt. He spent his whole year with the Giants there. He came over, lefty bat, first base / DH, and he had really good numbers with the Blue Jays. Joey Votto fits the exact same bill. A legacy player. Instead of the Giants, it's the Reds. He's from the city of Toronto, essentially. Canadian, lefty bat, first baseman, platoons with Vlad. And, he still has a lot in the tank, despite him being up there in age. I think Votto still has another good year left in him. So I think the move to the Blue Jays makes sense. I mean, Joey Votto, it's either re-signing with the Reds, signing with the Blue Jays, or retiring. And, I mean, that's the only way I see Joey Votto. I don't see him signing with any other team, but that's just kind of how I go. And now an unrealistic player signing at all would be Trevor Bauer. There was news that his agents are meeting with teams hoping to find him a job. He had a great year in the MPB, and I would love to have Trevor Bauer back, man. I love this guy. He is a great pitcher. Obviously, you either like him or you hate him. His personality, it is a lot for some players, some teams. But I would love to see Trevor Bauer back. Doesn't matter if it's with Oakland. Could be back with the Reds. Probably not the Dodgers. But there are teams out there that I think could benefit from having Trevor Bauer on their team. I would love to see him back with an MLB team. How realistic is that? I don't know, but I'm really hoping that he will be on a major league team come the start of the season. But that's going to kind of do it for us today here. Those are some of my predictions. I might do some more on Friday, which will be most likely the next episode. We'll be talking about the award winners, and hopefully there's some sort of signing or trade that happens that we can talk about as well. Later on today, the Rookie of the Year gets announced. Tuesday, it's the Manager of the Year. Wednesday, it's the Cy Young, and then Thursday, it's the MVP. So stay tuned for all of that. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening today, and I will see you on Friday.